of others and thinking there is something wrong with you. You're just not them. You don't have what they've got. And you think there's something missing inside me. What's wrong with me? Why me? Well, if you ever think this or versions of this episode is for you. Welcome to the Joyful Mate podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher, your joyful journey mentor. The purpose of this podcast is to help you embrace the whole you and love the whole you and everything about you. And that way, you'll get to experience more joy, happiness, and fulfillment, and a greater connection with life as a whole. So, this topic is about embracing the whole you. And often, what happens is we go about looking and comparing and contrasting the world around us with what we have inside of us or who we are and what we see in the mirror. And that's ultimately us trying to relate to what's around us and find things that are relevant and things that are helpful to us, such as resources. And we are then, in order to understand ourselves, we need to have a comparison. We need to have a, a starting point or a relative point. So let me explain this. So, for example, temperature. Temperature's a relative experience. So we can go out and experience 40 degrees days and think, oh, it's so hot. And then the change of weather comes and the temperature drops and it drops 10, 15, or maybe 20 degrees. And we think, oh, it's so cold. But in actual fact, like if it goes from 20, no, not so 20, but 40 down to 30 or 25 or even 20 degrees, it's a significant drop in terms of what we were comparing it to and what we experienced. And we can think it's cold, right? But then if you think about it in terms of absolute temperature, which we don't relate to absolute temperature, we have it's a contrast in temperature that we relate to. But the absolute temperature being 20, 25, or 30 degrees isn't cold. If we experience 20, 25, or 30 degrees in winter, we do not think that's cold. We actually think that's hot. So it's relative. And we need a point of comparison in order to understand the world we live in and to relate to it. And so we go about our lives in terms of looking at others and looking at what they have. And then we look at ourselves and think, oh, I don't have that. Or, yes, I have that. Or I've got something that I'm more proud of in terms of what you don't have and I've got. And so we're constantly in this comparison mode. And it's about relating. It's about um, just understanding the world we live in and the environment we live in. And what often happens is that we see things in others that we then appear that don't we don't have. But the thing is, everyone's completely unique and different, and it's an absolute like doing the comparison is really and really making it a big deal is pointless. It can help you move forward and make a change in order to help fill that gap, but you'll never be able to be them because you're not them, right? You're a complete, unique, beautiful human. And your point of difference is you, right? So there's no one else on planet Earth that is you, which is amazing. It's magnificent in just knowing that there's no one else like you. And so your role is really to be the best version of you. And you often hear that. And so it's not comparing you to someone else, it's comparing you to yesterday or growing into that person that you ultimately is you, that authentic self. And growing into that authentic self is embracing who you are, we we can't be we can't be someone else, and so we're always going to be a second version of them or a not so good version of them, which we then feel down, right? Because we're not them. So we're best to really ride with what we have and make the most of it. And I often think of it or life like a game of cards, for example. So in when you're playing cards, you get dealt a set of a hand or whatever, a set of cards. And that's your set to deal with, right? And or to play the game with. And all you can do is play the game with that hand in front of you. And that's like life. You're given a body, you're you're given genetics to make the most of, to make a difference in terms of showcase the best version of you. And that starts by really embracing who you are and not getting carried away with these contrasts and differences or comparisons with others. It's more acknowledging and thinking, wow, that's, admirable. But it's not me. And like, even if you want something about them, you can sort of make changes in your life, but you're never going to be them. You can make an improvement. So just say you sort of admire that person's waistline or something like that, right? And you then look at yours and think yours is nothing like theirs. Well, in actual fact, you always distort the way you look, right? Embellish the way you look. But that can also be motivating in the sense that, well, I can make a difference. I'm sure I can improve my waistline. And yes, you can, but you'll never get it to that other comparison because you're just not them. And so it's absolute a fantasy to think that you can be someone else. And why would you want to be someone else when you have all this uniqueness about you? So it's more about embracing you, and you come with things that people admire about you. And really what you want to do is really, keep eh, amplifying that to the world because that's your uniqueness. And we want to embrace the other side that we don't have by either getting other people to do the things that we don't like doing. That anything you procrastinate on, for example, is things that you don't warm to, you don't gravitate to, you don't have this magnetic pull towards. So, but there's someone out there that has a magnetic pull towards that loves doing it. There's people that love cleaning. I don't like cleaning. I'll do a bit, I'll do it to a point, but I'm not going to be getting a house to a standard that some people would say is clean, right? So I would get someone that loves cleaning. I actually married someone who likes cleaning. So and and that is where we have synergy, right? So and again, it's like it's acknowledging that that she has this cleanness about her. I'm not going to be like that because I'm not like that. But it's obviously it's what we how we complement one another. And this is how we can better work together in harmony is when we complement one another and utilize other people's strengths or what they value in terms of what's important to them, allow them to do more of that, allow you to do more of what's important to you. And we get this complementary synergistic effect. And we better work together. We better collaborate together. So we don't want to just constantly be down on ourselves thinking, I just can't do it like them. Of course you can't. You're not them. So, and what you want to then think is, well, what area in my life am I like them in terms of like, so you might be admiring their discipline in health, but you don't have a strong focus on health. It's health not hugely important to you, but you have a strong focus on family, for example. So that's where you'll be really disciplined. And that's where you'll have a lot of order in your life. And things will be very structured and planned and well executed because it's important to you. And so it's acknowledging, oh, that's their superpower, and that's in health. And they dedicate a lot of time and energy and discipline and put a lot of money into health. and they get results. You, on the other hand, have a higher value or priority on family. And that's where you put a lot of time, money, energy. And as a result of that, everything from the outside, like for people looking in, they think, oh, you have amazing family life. Of course, because you put a lot of time and energy into it. You create the order and you amplify that order. Whereas the other person is amplifying the order and health. And so it's foolish to think that you'll ever have a similar body or physique or health results as them simply because you're not putting equal amount of time and energy, and of course you're not them. So it's better to acknowledge where you're got your values and recognize that yes, you've got the qualities you admire in them in you, but it's in the areas that are more important to you, and that's being showcased, as opposed to getting down and thinking that, oh, I should have that, or I should look like that. No, that's not you, and it will never be you. And you'll try, if you try to do what they're doing, you will start, but you'll lose interest, and you'll go back to spending more time with your family because that's what you love doing. That's what lights you up. But that's what's going to give you longevity is if you focus on the areas that you value, that are important to you, because that brings a meaningful life. That brings more joy into your life, more happiness and fulfillment. And so that will result in longevity. Okay. Provided you don't abuse your health. So you only have to do health to a degree. But if you have meaning and purpose to life, that adds more years to your life. You've got reason for living. You've got reason to look after yourself. So again, it's more important to focus on your superpowers and allow them to just amplify and speak for themselves. And you'll enjoy being yourself. And with the things that you don't like doing, embrace other people to do that and ask them, would you like to do this for me? I'll pay you for it. And some people often to just do it to help out because they love doing it. So, and again, with, in terms of your physique and the way you look, just remember, this is what I learned when I was very young, that so when kids are growing up, they're relating to the world and they will always point out points of differences, right? Because what they're doing is observing the world, then using their mirror neurons and trying to reflect that amongst them in order to relate to you. So they're wanting to relate to the world around them, but they see that there's a difference. That in my case, I had a big nose, so people used to point out my big nose, and no one really had a bigger nose than me. And so that was my point of difference. And to them, it was funny, right? Because um, kids are not trying to make you a fool or make a laugh of you. They just see it as different, right? And it's maybe a bit amusing because you're so different. But we can, as a kid, we can take that memory of being laughed at and then draw shame to our big nose, or me draw shame to my big nose, and then think that I've got a problem and I'm carrying this big nose and this big nose is a problem. What helped me better understand and relate to the world was when I took my big nose around the world and realized in countries that they've all got small noses, everyone wants to stand out, right? And so my big nose stands out in countries where they have small noses, and they admire that, and because it's different, and everyone sort of wants that point of difference. And this is the thing that's really funny about the world we live in, is that when you have the point of difference, you think there's something wrong with you, but in another aspect, people want points of difference in order to stand out. And we do that through a mating point of view, right? So, in those early years, we all want to stand out so that we get picked to then reproduce and we can reproduce, and that's how life goes on. Um, but but yeah. And so this is what I find really interesting or contradictory or ironic about this is that my point of difference here in Australia was sort of, I drew shame to it. But then when I went to other countries, they really admired it and they loved it, and it drew a lot of attention. So I was a celebrity just having a big nose. And so what I realized is that, again, it's just the way in which we see the world, the way in which we individuals relate to the world, and they're drawing a comparison from themselves in order to understand you, and so they're comparing and contrasting in order to actually relate to you. They're ultimately trying to relate to you. So uh, we can only just be us, right? And just go about life being us. And so the way in which we do that is embracing the wholeness of who we are, and not seeing it as that my point of difference is a flaw. And actually, in fact, your point of difference can be a showcase, like my nose was in other countries. But depending on which country you're in, right? And it's the same with your skin type or skin color, for example. So, again, you can be ridiculed for it, or in other places, you fit in more or you stand out more. And same with body sizes, for example. So, in Western society, models typically generically are sort of these ultra slim people, right? And there's not many ultra slim people out there, so they're sort of a few percentile that sort of fit this model. But that's what the fashion industry promotes, and then therefore, if people want to be they associate beauty with the fashion industry. And if they think, if I'm going to be beautiful, or if I am to have beauty, I need to be ultra slim, which is complete rubbish. Because in Africa, for example, they like much larger bodied people, right? That is attractive to them. So it's interesting, isn't it? When it really depends on, it's subjective, and it's a bit culturally and societal. But ultimately, you know, big bodies are beautiful depending on the context, or, the situation they're in. And same with ultra slim bodies. They're beautiful, but depending on what, context they're in. So that ultra slim body in Africa is not considered beautiful, right? And so that wouldn't be desirable. So that person wouldn't be attracting a lot of opposite sex, or depending on what sex orientation you have, you wouldn't be getting a lot of attention, for example. However, if you had that larger body, which is not looked up to in Western, well, and again, this is just the way you see the world. Again, like, yeah, it's just, it is fascinating. And so what really will help you embrace the whole you is when you get a broader perspective of the things that you're disowning or consider a flaw. So if you consider a part of you that is wrong and you need to correct, you're just seeing what's not great about it. You're only seeing one side of it, but it's got a whole nother side. It serves purposes, right? There's an upside to it. So with everything, it is whole. Everything is whole and complete, right? The universe is whole and complete, and it's constantly transforming amongst the wholeness. And so the thing that you're disowning about yourself has another side to it that you are not looking for, in terms of what are the benefits, how does it serve, who start looking for the people that admire that side. You get what I mean? And so when you start to look for the wholeness in everything, you'll start to see a better perspective, and it won't be emotional. You won't then see the world as something is missing or something's wrong with the world. You will see a more complete picture, and you'll have a greater understanding, and you'll see the world as it is, and you'll see how it serves and how it disserves equally. But you'll see the wholeness, and you'll think, wow, how amazing how everything just complements one another ultimately at the highest level and even at the smallest level, and how it all comes together and works and how we ultimately, like, so through conflict we better understand one another and we unite stronger afterwards, right? Because the conflict brings out the points of difference that we then work through and then ultimately unify. So you got to remember, it's all in a process and a state of transformation, and so is your body. So is you, in terms of what you value is in a constant state of transformation. You're going on a journey. You're increasing your awareness, and as you increase your awareness, you increase your understanding of the world around you and how you relate to the world around you, and your understanding of self and your level of self acceptance and self love all grows if we have an open mind to growing. Otherwise, we can shut down, have a closed mind, and then just see things as missing or flaws and something's wrong with me. And then that's the way we interpret the world. And the issue is we'll constantly see those in others, and then that will remind us of something we're not loving in ourselves, and we'll constantly feel shameful and guilty, and something's not right and everything's wrong and the world is, not a nice place. It's complete rubbish. Complete rubbish. It's because you're not allowing yourself to expand your lens and how you see the world. And the only way you can do that is through an open mindedness and start to look for what you're not seeing. When we have a closed mind, we get fixated on one side and we embellish it and exaggerate it, like the media does about certain news articles. It only gives you evidence of the one side to make you feel that, angry and emotional and frustrated. And that grabs your attention. And anything you're not loving about yourself will grab your attention and will make you emotionally angry and frustrated. The only way you can dissolve that emotion is to start looking at what you're not seeing. And if you need help with this, if you want help with loving a disowned part, or if you're having trouble relating to the world, please reach out to me, or relating to others. Please reach out to me. I can help you see a broader perspective. I can help you see the wholeness and have more gratitude for the world as it is, as compared to what you think it should be. And if you always have this particular view of the world, you'll be frustrated because you're missing the wholeness. You're missing the completeness of it. You're not seeing it as it is. And it's the same as love. We can have more love for one another when we can embrace the wholeness of each other, as opposed to just loving one side of a person. And so if you need help better relating to the world, better relating to others, or better relating to yourself, please reach out, book in a consult, click on the discovery link in the show notes, and I'd love to help you. Look forward to enlightening you more in 2026. Thank you for listening to the Joyful Mate podcast. And if you've got feedback, please share it. I'd love to hear what you're relating well to, what you want to hear more of, and I'll share more of that information and make sure that you experience more joy, fulfillment, and happiness in your life.